Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And
Jillian should be arriving momentarily.
awesome and good to put a face with a voice.
Thank you. Likewise. Oh, I like your background.
Oh, thank you. So my daughter, she's 5 years old, and I'd hate saying this, but she's your biggest fan. Uh,
Wow, that's awesome. I don't
every
hate
night
it.
before bedtime, I mean, we read a story, and then she goes to sleep listening to Greeking Out, and then
That's
at every road trip is Greeking Out.
oh,
So it's pretty awesome.
that's great. That's great. We're gonna start doing some live shows pretty soon. We're gonna go back to doing live shows. We did one at Comic-Con
Oh, cool.
last summer when the strike was on and they were looking for things to do. And it was great. It worked really, really well. That was the first time we had done a live reading of it. And then we have done a couple more at some schools and things like that, which were fun. And we did one at Boston, WBUR's Podcast Fest. We did that. That was really successful. So we're hoping to do more of that stuff. There's Jillian.
Jillian, thanks for joining.
Hello.
Hello. I was just telling your father that my 5-year-old daughter, Riley, she's the biggest fan of Greeking Out. And she loves
Oh,
it. She goes, it's part of her bedtime routine, every road trip. She's always asking for Greeking Out. Even when she's just playing Legos, she has to have Greeking Out playing nonstop.
that's so sweet.
We like to think of ourselves as the soundtrack to Lego building. Like
You know,
that's kind of what we want, you know.
The
the
only time
ultimate compliment.
the only time it got us some weird looks was when we were at a church function, and my daughter was saying, "No, the one true God is Zeus. I heard so on Greeking Out." Like,
Whoops.
oh my goodness! But she
Oh,
loves it though.
No.
It's very educational and very entertaining, and she was very excited when I told her I was going to be talking to you too.
Oh, that's great. Well, tell her we said hi.
Awesome, we'll do. If we could roll into it, that'd be
Sure.
great. Let's see, Kenny, with over 30 years, 30 successful years in children's broadcasting, can you share some of your pivotal moments in your career that significantly shaped your approach to storytelling?
I don't know that I would say 30 successful years. I'd say like 28 were successful. There were two that were kind of touch and go for a while.
Gotcha.
First two were terrible.
Yeah, those two were awful. We don't like to talk about those 2 years. No, honestly, I think if you asked me, like, if I had to pick one word to describe what I am and what I have been in my entire career, I would probably say storyteller. It's just nice that now, 30 years later, it is literally come down to distilled to just that. And I don't mean storytelling like in the corporate, I'm a storyteller kind of way. I mean, literally, we all have a shared experience, and very often narrative is the way that we can connect those shared experiences. And when I say narrative, I mean written or spoken or musical or what have you. There's a lot of different ways to talk about an experience and create a feeling that you can then share with somebody else. And that's what I do with words. And I think I started out in children's television, started to lose my hair, realized that a 40-year-old bald man in a treehouse would be kind of creepy. So I went into radio, and luckily enough, there was a children's radio network starting. I mean, I did some stints in oldies radio and in modern rock radio, progressive rock, all that kind of stuff. But I found a niche in doing stuff for kids and wound up starting the kids radio side of satellite radio at XM. And then that became SiriusXM, and I was there for 23 or 4 years.
Very
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time.
long time. Yeah, I was one of the original programmers hired at XM. So, yeah, it's been a while, but I think honestly, even working on the record label side of things with a record label in Nashville and things like that, all of it comes down to finding a different way or finding ways to connect to kids and families with a story in one way or another.
And a great job you guys have done with that. Performer, writer, producer, how has your role evolved in the children's media landscape over the decades?
I think that really it started more as like talent and writing stuff and just sort of, doing everything. And for a while, I moved into like a middle management evolution, especially in satellite radio. I sort of oversaw a bunch of channels and things like that. Jillian and I have always talked about wanting to work together on some projects. So we always had that as like a goal. But I love the fact that, you know, as far as the arc has gone, that I've kind of come back to that sort of simplistic approach where it is just me and Jillian and some creative ideas. And I work with a bunch of different a couple of different organizations, but it's all that same sort of aesthetic. It's a bit more hands-on. I don't want to say like, you know, low budget or anything, but I do more of it myself. I'm actually doing the work instead of talking about the work. I don't know if you know anybody that's in management, but half your job is talking about the work. And then in some cases, if it's middle management, the other half of your job is doing the work you were just talking about. If you're high enough, if you're high enough on the ladder, you just talk about work that other people do. But I never got to that point.
Awesome. Animal Farm, long-running show on SiriusXM for a long time, about 20 plus years. It was incredibly successful. What inspired the concept, and how has the show evolved over the years?
Jillian largely inspired the concept.
Awesome. Thank you, Jillian.
Well, it's
You're
true.
welcome.
I mean, you know, Jillian is, as my oldest child, was the test market for a lot of things. When we started satellite radio and we started the Animal Farm show, the idea was to create a sort of a physical, fantastical representation of a family. So the kids were very often represented in animal form, and I was trying to be the dad, organizing everything. And we did an approach that a fellow named Gary Landis, who worked with me at the Children's Satellite Network, coined as the sheep in wolf's clothing, where we had the characters, these fictitious animals, misbehave, model incorrect behavior, and then the kids could call in or listen and they would correct that behavior themselves. It was empowering to the listeners, and it was fun to listen to, and it was funny because the chipmunk was being weird or naughty or what have you. So we very often would display the incorrect behavior and then correct it as we went through. And it was also a very simple way to look at adult issues from a kid's point of view and kid issues as if they were as important as adult issues. So all of that comes back to my family life and being able to kick around ideas with Jillian and my wife Kim and all of our other kids. You know, they were ghost writers from the earliest days.
So, Jillian, you came up with the character Forest Skunk.
Yeah, that was all me. I mean, how could you not? I think I was like
You
5
did.
or 6 at the time, and
It was
it's
pretty fun.
you
One of the
know,
top characters.
Forrest Gump is great.
Yeah,
Would have been a much
thought
better
the movie was called the Tom Hanks movie. She thought it was called Forrest Gunk, and I was like, oh, I'm running with that.
I mean, I still think we need to pitch that. Forrest Gump would be a great movie.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
Years later, it'd be a great movie. Can either of you recall a particularly memorable or humorous moment from the Animal Farm?
I like the songs. Your parodies of the songs are always get me. I don't know if this one made it, but I was a big Britney Spears fan growing up, and he had "I'm not a girl, not yet a woman. I'm not a squirrel, not yet a rodent" was just so funny.
I'm not a squirrel. Yeah, we had the chipmunks singing that. Yeah, it was fun.
Nice.
Those were fun. Those were hard to do. We did a parody of a 50 Cent song called 50 Cents Worth of Chipmunk that didn't last long because it only really worked while that song was immensely popular. But there's still a song that we remixed the Barbra Streisand song by the band Duck Sauce, the artist Duck Sauce.
Yes.
Barbra Streisand. Ooh, and we just swapped out Barbra Streisand for the llama saying Lorenzo Llama. That's all it was. Kids loved it.
Awesome.
This was actually not my idea. Actually, a coworker, Paul Bachman, suggested I did that at SiriusXM. He's still at SiriusXM. He's an executive there in the engineering department, but he suggested we do it, and it worked. So there you go.
That's awesome. Innovations in children's media. How has children's programming evolved with the rise of digital media? Which innovations do you find most exciting and impactful? My daughter, she's a huge fan of YouTube Kids. I had to put time limits on it. But what innovations are you finding most exciting, impactful in today's youth?
Uh, Jillian, I'm gonna say podcasting, which I'm sure you're probably good. That was sort of the obvious one, but
Yeah.
what I love about podcasts is their accessibility for kids. Kids can listen with a parent, or they can listen by themselves, which is kind of an interesting thing if it's chosen the right way. And I love that podcasts are audio, and I love the simplicity of a storytelling podcast like Reeking Out or Circle Round or something like that, because we live in a world where our kids are being just inundated, bombarded by images, right? Their tablets, the phone, school, even school is on a screen. There's screens in the classroom now. There's screens at your desk, and then the teacher's working on a screen on a chalkboard. It's just, there's images and digital content coming at them from everywhere. And a podcast is similar, except it's content, but there's no image to it. It is especially a simple single voice story. I think that's part of the reason why it works, is because it's a very different kind of experience than kids are getting in every other media. There's a lot of frenetic coming at you stuff. And believe me, I love a lot of the content that's out there, but it gives us a unique corner to a market when we're sort of zigging while others are zagging.
Mhm.
Is that, Jillian, did I articulate that correctly?
Yeah, I agree. I have two young kids too. My son is 6 and my daughter just turned 5. And they definitely can fall down the YouTube Kids rabbit hole very quickly. And it's good to a certain extent, but I feel like podcasts, the quality of like some National Geographic Kids, like these companies are more vetted. Like the content I feel like is a little bit educational. You can start out on YouTube, and then before you know it, you're watching some college kid making a water slide in his bedroom, and it goes downhill real quick.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah. Or opening, kids opening Christmas presents like a pile the size of Mount Everest and having to explain that that's not an ordinary Christmas. So I feel like there's definitely an educational edge to podcasts that a lot of content like YouTube and video can't offer as well. And yeah, like Kenny said, there's something just very simplistic but natural about it. It gives me like sitting around the old radio vibes with the campfire in the background. Like it is storytelling at its roots, and I feel like something about that resonates with even kids today. There's something about just hearing an old-fashioned story that's really impactful and important, and I think it resonates with young kids too.
Awesome. With working with platforms like Tinkercast and 8 Pound Gorilla Records, how have you ensured that your content is both educational and entertaining?
Well, I think, the beauty of working with Tinkercast, of course, I'm the head writer for Tinkercast, and they have Wow in the World, which is the most popular kids podcast in the world. Mindy Thomas and Guy Raz host that show. And, that's hundreds of millions of downloads strong. But they have all of the people at Tinkercast, all of the staff members, everybody on that team has an understanding that there has to be a wow involved in what they do. And that's not just in the name of the show, Wow in the World. In fact, they put wow in a frustrating amount of things. If they made spaghetti, they would call it Wowgetti. But the whole point is they want there to be a moment of, oh, in every listening experience. Every time you turn on a podcast or listen to an audio book or even read something from Tinkercast, we want there to be some sort of wow. And very often that comes in the form of information or knowledge that you didn't know, or something that you thought you knew and didn't know. So there's a great way to include curriculum without being educational. I also think that SEL, social emotional learning, is something that was always part of the Animal Farm. All of the bits that I did were a growth experience for the kids that would listen. There was always the characters always had a growth experience. They would learn something, or sometimes the other way around. I would learn something about myself as they were talking. But empathy is a really, really important tool that I think we constantly need to reinforce for kids, especially as they get more and more isolated. They feel like their relationship with others is through a screen, is through media. And I think that as part of the media, I think we need to remind them to always take the feelings of the person in front of them or on the other end of the screen into consideration. And I also think that that helps the kids establish an innate form of media suspicion. They just don't necessarily. They're a little bit more tech savvy. I want them to be naturally skeptical of the media. That's the word I'm looking for. I want them to have a healthy skepticism of everything that they get. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's all fake news, but I think that everything that they get, they need to consider the source. And when you consider the source, that is also a form of empathy. Wondering what the other person is thinking and doing is part of that process.
Insightful. Jillian, I got some fun ones for you. How has growing up with your father influenced your decision to co-author Greeking Out and working on the podcast? What's it like?
It's so much fun. It really is just a blast. I always say I grew up having Kenny tell me like bedtime stories every night and just being one of those kids that were like, this is the best story ever. And then I would go and tell my friends like bedtime story, and it didn't really translate very well. I get some weird looks on the playground, but he definitely gave me the bug for storytelling and creativity and everything in that whole realm. I definitely got from him. And like he was saying about the Animal Farm, I mean, some of those bits are just straight from our dinner table. Like it is just a constant environment of joking and laughing and just trying to one up each other. I'm the oldest of 7. So, I mean, when we get started on a joke, it snowballs. So I always knew that I wanted to do something in creativity, writing. Writing's pretty much the only thing that I have an actual skill set in at this point. And I kind of started in more like traditional marketing, public relations, that sort of thing, and then doing more creative projects on the side. And then when I left my marketing job to stay home with my young kids, and it just so happened to coincide with when Kenny was getting started on Greeking Out and doing his own freelance career. And we were like, okay, this could be the time to team up and try something. And I always joke that I was nervous about like writing for him because, you know, like I said, like he's like my greatest inspiration. So I wanted to do a good job. And then as soon as I wrote the first script, I was like, oh, I know this man's voice. Like I can do this. I've been listening to it my whole life. So I think it was just really easy for me to write scripts for him, like easier than anybody else that I've ever worked for, just because I know the way he speaks. I know his really awful dad jokes and endless amounts of puns. So it was a really easy transition. And now it's just so fun. I feel like every time we promote the book or do anything, we just look at each other and are like, can you believe we get to do this? They're paying us for this? What is this? So yeah, it's a real dream come true for sure.
And I've heard you're quite the great master at dad jokes. Do your children listen to the podcast? Do they like
yes, they do. They're very confused. They're like, why I don't, they call Kenny Hefe, which is another stupid story, but it's really great to have my son be like Hefe in public. So they're very confused why Hefe is coming through the radio, and they try to talk back to him. They think that I'm the Oracle. Then they think that my mom is the Oracle. So they know it's like a family show, but they don't really, they can't really wrap their head around it, but it's fun now. My son is just, he's going into first grade. So he's actually like starting to really get into the stories, and that's really cool. But they also love the book. They're very sweet with the book. They'll carry it around. The book's in their library from school. So my son will like bring it home and be like, look what I checked out. Like, you're so sweet. So they're really into it now.
How have you ensured that your unique voice and perspective shines through in the content that you create?
I feel like when I got on board, we were trying to make, and I joined, I think in season 2. And the biggest criticism of the show, I think at that point, was that the Oracle was just more straight facts. and nonfiction tidbits. And I feel like I've really tried to turn the Oracle into a character that has some sort of sassy comebacks with Kenny, and you know, her love for snakes, and just like giving her a little bit more personality. That's been fun. And like once you do it once, like the snake bit, it keeps coming. There's so much snakes in these stories. It's been great, but we've actually gotten some negative feedback that they think the Oracle is a little too mean to Kenny. And I'm like, well, that is because it is me, the daughter, just making fun of her dad publicly.
Right.
So
right. When people understand that, it's a little easier to.
Yeah. So sometimes the father-daughter relationship comes in a little too strong, and I have to like dial it back, that I can't roast everything that he says. But I mean, it's great. Who gets to like make their dad say weird things for a living? So
Right.
And which has been your favorite myth to adapt into a story?
I don't know. I mean, they're all so good. I don't I would say the very first myth I did was the Orpheus, and where he goes down to the underworld to rescue, how do you say it? Eurydice? Eurydice. Yeah, I always
Yeah, she doesn't have to say any of these names. I gotta say them.
Yes, and that was the remake. That's how she dies. And so that was really fun because that's where it started, and it was also the very first script that I did for the show. So that one holds a special place in my heart. But lately we've been doing myths from other mythologies around the world, not just Greek myths, and those have been really fun, just to learn about and to see the differences, but also the similarities, the same themes, but just how different cultures play with these same stories. That's been really fun to explore and to adapt.
Yeah, I liked how you brought in the Egyptian mythologies and the Asian stuff. It was very insightful. You know, there's more to mythology than just Greek. So that was good. Thinking of creative process, what's your creative process when adapting ancient myths for modern audiences? What has been your challenges in making those stories accessible for kids today?
You know, just cleaning them up. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for cutting heads off, I mean, every story, it just Zeus is not a good husband. He is not a faithful husband. He's not a good guy. And somebody gets their head cut off in every other myth. So these things can be pretty brutal for a kids and family audience. So we don't want to deviate too much from them, but we want to stay true to the text. So we are very often straightforward and honest. We run a disclaimer at the beginning of the podcast. Usually it's a little humorous, a little lighthearted. It's there to let the parents know what's going to be in the podcast. Like for around Halloween, we did an episode all about monsters, and we knew that some of the little listeners might get scared by that. So we wanted to give you that up front. But it is, you know, honestly, I think part of the success of Greeking Out is also the challenge, which is to take these stories that have been around for a long time and put them in a format so that you can stay true to the essence of the story without being as specifically graphic as the original text calls for. And I got to give Nat Geo a big shout out, because they have curriculum experts, you know, classics professors that review our scripts and they help us work through that. And of course, we have writers like Jillian who take on the brunt of the deal.
Thinking of Nat Geo, how did that come about?
Well, you want to tell the story, the Zeus the Mighty story, Joe?
Sure. I haven't told it in a while, but yeah. So there was another book called Zeus the Mighty, which is written by Crispin Boyer, who's a great author. He was getting published through National Geographic Kids. And in this book, it's about animals at a pet store. And the animals at the pet store are listened to this podcast that's called Greeking Out. And because of the Greeking Out podcast, they think that they're Greek gods. And I think is the Olympus, the name of the...
Yeah, I think they live in Mount Olympus. It's the Mount Olympus pet store. They live in Olympia, Georgia, or something like that.
Yes, yeah. So they think that they're Greek gods. Anyway, when they were trying to promote this book, they thought that it would be really funny to make the actual Greeking Out podcast that the animals listen to. So it's just supposed to be a quick one season, couple episode things. And Kenny had already worked with National Geographic before. So they asked him if he was interested in doing it. He said yes. And then just that, those initial, I want to say 5 episodes that they put out, like just took off and became very, very popular. And then they were like, all right, let's make another season. And then we did that for about 8 seasons. And then it was so popular that they wanted to make it into a book. So it's now a book series that's based on a podcast that was based on a book. So it is a true full circle moment here.
Wow.
So thank you, Crispin. We're here because of you.
Thanks. The OG of greeting out Crispin Boyer.
Yes.
And Zeus the hamster and Poseidon the pufferfish.
So who is the Whitesnake fan?
Oh, who isn't a Whitesnake fan?
True. Like,
Come on.
Who isn't a Whitesnake fan?
Well, I wrote that
there's a lot of
episode, and
Whitesnake
you just
references.
you can't not have it's about a white snake. I mean, what can we do? You got to
They
work
wrote
that pun in.
That part of the pun just wrote itself, really.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody can take credit for that. It just happened.
Yeah, but I
do you
know
have
our
a pet snake,
producer. Well, I'm sorry.
Do you have a pet snake?
Oh no, but everyone asks me that. Whenever we do live shows, the kids are like, "Where's your snake?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." But no, I might get one at this point. I feel like the snakes have done really well by me, so maybe I should consider getting one.
You guys have made a great team creatively. Have there ever been a creative disagreements that you guys have gone through, and how'd you guys resolve it?
I don't think we've ever had like an actual like, come to blows. I feel like there's some things we're just so comfortable with each other that you'll make a joke and I'll be like, no, that's stupid, or
Right.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Like it's just we're obviously very comfortable and familiar with each other, so there's no like hurting feelings. Also, we're really working with stories that exist, so that's not our original ideas that we're shooting down. We're kind of workshopping and adapting tales that already exist. So I feel like if it was one of us came up with a brand new original concept and we tried to do it, there would be maybe more disagreements, but for the most part, I think we were able to talk through everything.
I'm not sure there would be more disagreements. I think there would just be, we would be more respectful of each other's feelings. In this case, it's like, well, Zeus, it's just weird that Zeus does that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I didn't write it that way. I'm just telling you the story the way it was written, know? So, but it is we are comfortable. She could say, yeah, that joke didn't work easily. And there's no harm, no foul. It won't be the first time, won't be the last time, and vice versa. We are, I think that is the advantage to being this close to each other, is that it's not personal at all. It is, or maybe it is really personal and it's not professional. I don't know, one or the other. But yeah, we are able to go past the awkward ego stage and just kind of get to what works best, because at the end of the day, we're in each other's corner all the time because we're mother and daughter. So it really does not affect that relationship. I don't think we've ever really had a big disagreement about anything content-wise. She and I are generally on the same page. Sometimes the producer will have some suggestions, or we'll cut something that we want back in. But if we put everything in the podcast, they'd probably be an hour long each. So that's for the best.
Awesome. Oracle of Wi-Fi, Tori Kerr. She's an amazing voice actress. That dynamic energy between you two is really entertaining. Like you mentioned, Jillian, this sass. I can't get enough of Tori's sass. How many people have you auditioned before you found Tori?
Tori was the original. Nobody else auditioned. Tori was the program director for Kids Place Live at SiriusXM.
Okay.
And she was like the co-host for the morning show. She was Mindy's producer at SiriusXM for years. She has a master's degree in social work. She's a full-on social worker therapist. She decided to get out of radio and go do something meaningful with her life. But she, as a lark, did us a favor because she could always imitate I can't even say Alexa out loud or it will speak back to me. But she's a funny in the office, a funny impersonation. So we had her do it, and she owned it from day one. And it once Jillian started really writing, at first we thought she was just going to shout out facts. The whole point of the Oracle of Wi-Fi initially, and it's an initial design, was a way to, in audio form, represent the cool margin facts that National Geographic Kids books were famous for. So we wanted to be able to do that in audio form. And it was Jillian in season 2 that really brought a personality to the Oracle of Wi-Fi. There were some funny bits in the first season in the scripts that I wrote, but once we realized that a season needed twice as many scripts, we needed to find a writer who could write in that same tone. Jillian was perfectly cast for it, and she kind of took the Oracle to the next level in terms of the words. But Tori has never looked back.
Awesome. With Greeking out, I mean, it could be because of Greeking out, but Greek mythology is more mainstream now. For example, Disney's Percy Jackson series, and there's a new series on Netflix coming up, Chaos. What are your thoughts on this new trend? Do you think it'll bring more attention to the works like yours?
They're ripping us all off. They're just ripping us all off. To be honest, it's us. And
We're
they're
all
just
ripping Homer off, honestly.
yeah,
Gotcha.
no, I mean, it is strange. It's sort of having a bit of a moment, and we just kind of got lucky that we've been there or are there for it. But Percy Jackson, I mean, Rick Riordan wrote those books decades ago, and they're sort of having a resurgence. So I think these stories have been around for a long time, and I think it just shows how accessible and beloved this kind of content is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these characters exist, so it's fun to just have everybody sort of play with it and put their own spin on it. It's really cool.
Are there any upcoming projects or topics in mythology that you're excited to explore next? I mean, you did the Egyptian, the Asian. Is there anything that's come that you're looking forward to next, mythology wise?
Well, yeah. The next book that comes out in September on the 17th is Greeking Out 2 Heroes and Olympians. So that focuses a little bit more on the specific people, individual characters in Greek mythology, which is fun. But we also are working on something that involves the myths of the underworld, which is very exciting. We have already told the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey, but we are kicking around ideas for how to retell the story of Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know how more non-specific I can be. Did I tease that? Is there anything else we can tease?
No, we're doing a lot more with other mythologies too. So
yes. We
not
are
just Greek.
very much looking into internet field trips, as we call them in Greeking Out, but myths from other cultures around the world, because there's so much material there and they're great stories.
Besides Greek mythology or mythology in general, are there other genres of stories that you would love to tackle? Fiction, adventure, horror, anything? Write a rom-com?
Mm-hmm.
What other genres would you like to explore?
I mean, I might write a rom-com, but I don't. I'd like to see you write a rom-com. No, I mean, we definitely have plans to work together and try to do more fiction storytelling for a kid audience. That's like we were talking about, based on original ideas, kind of getting away from following the Greek stories. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can do with Greek mythology and those characters. So we're just sort of exploring like the next steps in that regard. But yeah, I think there's a whole wide range, but we're both interested in fiction in general. I'm really into poetry. So yeah, I'm hoping this is just the beginning of our writing career together.
Yeah, Jillian is an amazing poet. She does so much great stuff with words. Her mastery of words is something that I aspire to. I've always been a D&D nerd, so I'd love to do something sort of in the fantasy genre.
Awesome.
I feel like that is, and I think that's a nice extension from Greek mythology into that. But we also, I mean, there's so many idea outlines for different stories. I love writing scripts for audio. I really enjoy that. It is something that I find, I don't know, I'm just sort of drawn to. I think because everything that I write sort of feels like a narrator, it feels like narration. third person omniscient or first person, I'm in there. But I really enjoy writing character and story. So I would love to do a little more. I've had success in the kids genre, so that's, I think, where I would start. But I also have some really interesting ideas and twisted stuff that I'd like to do in a horror genre someday. But that will be many years in the future, because I don't think anybody wants to hear a scary story from me. But I do love scary stories. I do. And I will tell you this, just a plug. I don't know if you guys are at all familiar with the International Storytelling Festival.
No.
It's in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which is sort of a suburb of Johnson City in eastern Tennessee. It's in October. It's a beautiful little town. And if you really are interested in just listening to stories told to you, go there for the weekend. It is so worth it. It's a beautiful little town. It's a beautiful time of year. And they set up like 9 circus-style tents around the town, or they used to. That's how they used to do it. And they bring in storytellers from around the world, and they just tell you these amazing tales. Some of them are like Greek myths like we tell, but many of them are just original, funny, or poignant stories that you can connect with, whether you're a grown-up or a kid.
Awesome. Wrapping up here, what advice would you give to aspiring writers and content creators aiming to break into children's media?
Have a fallback.
Oh, stop.
No. That's the dad advice in me. No, I think honestly, finding a way to make money by doing what you love to do is really the key. But do what you love, even if it doesn't make you money. I would encourage you to find a way to do that. If you're working at, Starbucks as a barista every day, but you come home and write every night, do it. Keep doing it. If you love a story or telling stories, you should keep doing it. And you might reread it and think this is crap, and then you'll rewrite it or not, or ditch it or go somewhere else. But you have to make yourself right. It's just like any coach will tell you, if you want to be an athlete, you have to exercise, you have to practice. It's a muscle you must continue to work.
Awesome. Jillian, Kenny, thank you both for spending some time with me today. Quick question, when is that book coming out again?
The 17th of September, Greeking Out 2 Heroes and Olympians. Or it's just called Greeking Out Heroes and Olympians. But
looking forward to reading
look for it, and you can order it. You can pre-order it on Amazon if you want to.
Outstanding. Cool. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.